Bret Hart came over and I told Bret about the stroke, and then he mentioned, um, he talked about his stroke. You remember how many years back has that been that Bret had a stroke? He was riding a bicycle, and
Oh, geez, I can't remember the year.
I
20.
did tell him. I said, Bret, I was doing something more fun than riding a bicycle when I had my stroke.
Ah!
Excuse me.
Oh,
But but you know what, he told me he had the same type of stroke.
2002.
2002, he had the same type where had bleeding on his brain, and he said that it just he's just, you never know how it's going to happen. He said he really got back about 85%. uh I mean, he didn't everything. He still has problems with things to this day. Sometimes your speech and sometimes different parts of your body and everything. And I think a lot of it has to do with, if you get the proper amount of rest and all of that sort of stuff too. And then Jerry Briscoe told me the exact same thing. Jerry Briscoe had one the same type thing, and he still has problems with his as well.
I mean, to get back on the subject of what happened to you, I mean, are you? We talked about we've talked about death on this podcast. We talked about everything underneath the sun. But with you in your mind, I mean, we talked about it before. You feel like you're not your age. You feel like you're 20 to 25 years younger. You're still wrestling. You're still active. You're still doing all the things that you did 30 years ago. But I mean, you can't outrun Father Time, and not none of us can. So how do you
Well,
feel?
no, no.
How do you feel like about having this stroke and your future with wrestling and WWE? I mean, what's your what's your future with after the stroke?
Oh, I'm not going to change a thing. Not one thing.
Did the doctors say that? I mean, you're fully 100% recovered then, or
Oh, I guess.
I mean, have any side effects? Any dizziness? Any? I mean, I don't know the side effects long term.
No, no, not really. I mean, they gave me this big sheet of different things that can happen to you, or different things that you should watch for if you're thinking about having another stroke. I think that one main thing for me, especially, is keeping the blood pressure under control. Um, but no, I actually went back to my cardiologist yesterday, which was the first time in like 2 years that I'd gone to see him, and that was another thing that probably helped cause the stroke, was the fact that I hadn't been back to see my cardiologist in over 2 years, and they had gotten to a point where, like a couple of months ago, they said we can't keep re-prescribing you your blood pressure medicine until you come back in and just let the doctor check you over. And so I think I had gone maybe like a month or so without the blood pressure medicine too before the stroke. So anyway, so now I'm back on track on all that regular stuff, and yeah, I feel like I'm fine.
Yeah, and you're gonna
You know
rest.
what? Did you see? Maybe we talk about this in a second, but last night was the HBO special or documentary or whatever on Andre the Giant.
Oh, I loved it.
And it was so funny. I got to, it was, I just thought the thing was great. Andre was an awesome individual, and it was so cool to get to, be watching all of this stuff, and then to realize, wow, I worked with this guy so many times, and got to really, be around him and know what he was really like and that sort of stuff. But a lot of the stuff I learned, um, I learned something about Vince McMahon right at the very end of that Andre the Giant special, and I I think maybe that it's something that I have had too, but never really thought about it my whole life. They asked um, they asked Vince about how they put it about did how did Andre the Giant's uh, death affect you? And Vince hesitated, he pondered, and he thought, and he said, I have a certain, and I can't remember exactly the way he said it, but he said, there's something about me that I put bad things out of my mind in a hurry.
He said that. I'm going to correct you before you get into it. He was asked, "What was your last conversation with Andre?"
Okay.
And that's the answer he gave was, I tend to put negative things, out of my mind. I forget about it after it happens. So he answered that question to what was your last conversation with Andre?
Right.
So I guess
But it was also then the next thing they were asking was, how did it affect you? And of course it was that it affected him a lot. But what I was getting at was, he said, like you said, there's something about me that I put negative things out of my mind in a hurry. And I've always, when he said that, I just looked back at myself and I said, I think I do that too. I mean, when about certain things like the cardiac arrest, it was like I put that out of my mind just as soon as I got out of the hospital. And this stroke thing, I put it out of my mind just as soon as I got out of the hospital. I mean, I did the whole WrestleMania week. Then this past Monday night, our slow pitch softball league started. I went right out, had our first game, went 2 for 3. Just like nothing had ever happened. I just put that stuff out of my mind and keep on going like I've always been doing.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this, a lot of the fans, loyal listeners of the show, loyal listeners of you, the King, for so many decades. They're going to be concerned for you. They're, but probably going to tell you, well wishes via social media. But you're not gonna change what the King does on the regular basis. That's going to different cities and wrestling, making appearances. So you're gonna go right back on the horse, and it's amazing. And I'm echo what the doctors say. I mean, King, you survived the cardiac arrest, back to wrestling full time, to having a stroke while showing love, affection, and you're right back to, and there you were on TV. You're on the WB network hosting Hall of Fame and WrestleMania, and no one would have known that just a week and a half ago the King was in ICU for 3 days and could not say a word.
Yeah, so there you go. I don't know what to say about that, but that's the way it is.